All right. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to welcome today Scot McClamma, who is the International Recruitment Director at Pepperdine University. Welcome, Scott. I'm so excited to have you here.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I know that one of the things that, is all over your website and, super exciting, about Pepperdine just having recently opened a campus in Switzerland, right? And I believe students can get started, in August of this year. That's super exciting. Can you tell us a little bit more about that program?
Yeah, certainly. So this campus is one of our six study abroad campuses. So it falls under the umbrella of our international programs. So it's, as I mentioned, one of six. The five other study abroad locations where we have our own campus are London, Buenos Aires, Heidelberg, Germany, Florence, Italy, and the Washington, D.C. Program as well. This is we actually have been in Switzerland for a little while. It just moved location. So previously we were in Lausanne. Our facility was there, and then they were looking for a change. I don't really remember why. I think maybe the lease was coming up where they were, or something. They were looking for something different, but they found this really great opportunity of this new to have a new campus. It's actually a chateau. It's a 18th century chateau. It's called Chateau d'Hauteville. I don't, my French pronunciation isn't very good, so don't hold me to that. But basically, it sits in the hills above Vevey, Switzerland, overlooking Lake Geneva. Very, very beautiful place. So they kind of secured that location in 2020, and then have been working on it since then. I'm sure COVID kind of slowed some of that down, but they were working on it, renovating it, just bringing it up, adding some modern things to it so it could function as an actual campus. So they've added a lot of modern amenities, a commercial kitchen, technology for classrooms, and 150-seat dining hall. So the classrooms are there, library is there, as a dining hall, but also the student residences are there, all on that location. There's a garden. Students that are there studying get to work in the garden. And there's a vineyard that grows wine grapes. So it's it sounds amazing. So I'm trying to figure out how I can get Pepperdine to send me there sometime, because I'd love to spend some time there myself.
Yeah, and that was sorry. And that was exactly what my question was going to be. Have you visited? Because it sounds amazing.
No, I haven't. They just now had like a big kind of grand opening for it. But they didn't send me for that, unfortunately. And so students are, I believe they'll be sending a new cohort that applied to for the international programs last year. So that's generally how it works. When a student comes in as a first-year student, they come to our Malibu campus, and during that first year, if they want to go abroad for their sophomore year, they can apply to a specific program. And in fact, most students that study abroad do it in that sophomore year, and so you can do it. I believe January is kind of the deadline to make that, and then they figure out get accepted into a certain program, and then they can go as a sophomore.
That's amazing. And are there specific types of majors that are offered on this campus, or how does that
Yeah.
work?
So it's kind of like like a lot of our study abroad programs. Kind of the majority of courses that are offered with these programs specifically, where I mentioned those six locations where we have our own campus. A lot of the courses that are taught there are general ed courses. So it gives students the opportunity to kind of, they're not locked into a location based on what their major is. So it's, it can be kind of, if what I said sounded great and you're like, oh, I would love to go, I live in a chateau for a year. It doesn't matter necessarily what your major is. So most of the courses that are being taught there are going to be those general education courses that are required for all students. So I know that the upcoming semester there's going to be French taught there, history, some history courses, religion, earth science, plants and the environment, which goes along with the garden. I'm sure those students will be really getting hands-on experience in that. Sociology as well. So kind of more generalized courses.
Right. It sounds fantastic. And how about on the Malibu campus, right? What are some of the most popular majors? I know that a lot of students will flock to Pepperdine because of your business major, right? And that is something that definitely appeals to a lot of students. It tends to be on a lot of the lists that I see. But, beyond that, what are some of the other popular majors? And do you have any new and upcoming majors that students can look out for?
Yeah, certainly. So business administration is the most popular major still. It has been for a little while. And then followed by psychology, biology, economics, and sports medicine. So those are our top five most popular majors. For newer majors, a couple majors that are relatively new, been around for just a couple years. One of them is a finance major. So it's in the same division as business administration. It's our business administration division. And so it's housed in that division, and that one's really a fast growing major. So it's kind of taking some of the students that generally would go to business admin or now going more specifically into finance. There's a lot of really cool things that they do in that major. The university has set up a fund of over $1 million that the students themselves get to manage. So it's real money. It's not stock market game or anything like that. It's a real money. It's a real fund that the finance students get to manage and kind of work with. And so students are kind of excited about that to, not just be sitting in a classroom learning this stuff, but actually practically doing it. Another kind of newer major is our sustainability major. And I like talking about that one a lot because it really kind of gives an opportunity to talk about the liberal arts and what a liberal arts college is. So the sustainability major is not housed under any specific academic division. It's what we call an interdisciplinary major. So it pulls courses from different academic divisions. It kind of takes a holistic view of sustainability. So if you look at a big picture view of sustainability, yeah, it's going to involve science. But it's also going to involve politics. It's also going to involve communication. It's going to involve business. So it kind of pulls courses from these different academic divisions. Again, finding that kind of holistic, and that's a really representative kind of a liberal arts education, is that these different majors, these different things are actually connected a lot in many ways, and so. That's a really cool major as well. There's some cool, study abroad opportunities that go along with that, and field study programs that students get to do as well.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear you talk about this, Scott, it makes me feel like I want to go back to college all over again and do
Yeah, me
things
too.
differently, right? I mean, what's not to love about everything that you just said, right? So, yes. So I know you touched upon, what are some of the amazing programs that Pepperdine offers, and we do know about the amazing Malibu location as well, right? But beyond that, Scott, what according to you are the a couple of more strengths that Pepperdine has to offer?
Yeah. So I think one is the teaching emphasis. So with the faculty, the administration and their choice of who they bring on as faculty, they bring in teachers, and it sounds like, oh well, of course they're professors, but in higher education, there's kind of you can have a teaching focus, and you could also have like a research focus, and our professors are engaged in research, but they're also very interested in teaching, and so all of our courses are taught by full professors. There's no teaching assistants or grad assistants that do the teaching, which is what happens at a lot of other universities, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different kind of model and maybe a different philosophy. So, our professors are very involved and very focused on teaching. And so the university does a great job of really bringing strong teachers to the university. And so, which is, it's great. It just fits along with kind of our smaller class sizes that we have. And then, it plays into another strength of the university, which is the student faculty relationship, and the amount of time that kind of face time that students get with faculty. So, not just in the classroom, but any professor or student can schedule to meet with them during their office hours. A lot of the faculty live on our campus, and they regularly have groups of students just over to their house to talk even further. So there's a lot of great interaction, research as well. So professors bring students along for research with them. So we have a great, we do have some graduate schools, but not a lot of necessarily graduate programs. So these research opportunities are open and available to our undergraduate students. So it's really common for a student. I knew a student even as a freshman that got connected with a professor to begin working on a year-long research project. And so it has a great personal benefit for the students and kind of building that relationship. But it also really helps professionally. A lot of our students, when they graduate here, they've had papers published in academic journals with their name on it because of the research that they've done alongside of with the professors. So it really kind of opens up a world to them because of that relationship.
No, I think that, just so a couple of things as you were talking, couple of things that were going through my mind is, again, I'm taken back to my college days, and I remember how important it really is to have those close teacher-student relationships. And I remember during Christmas and during Thanksgiving and Christmas time, when as an international student, I can share my experience, wherein many students went back home, right? And I didn't have a place, and a couple of us didn't have a place to go to. So because of those tight-knit relationships with the professors, they invited us to their home for Thanksgiving and for Christmas. And it was just incredible, right? Definitely something that, again, as an international student, I so valued and treasured. Definitely not something that's mentioned on college websites, right? And it really just boils down to those relationships that take you, it gives you so much than just a basic education, right? And so, yes, absolutely, value that.
Certainly.
All right. Yeah, perfect. And, now if we can kind of just switch gears a bit and talk a little bit more about the admissions process. And, again, coming from an international perspective, I know that all my research was just done online. And so, didn't get a chance to visit too many colleges. And so beyond a point, Scott, things just blend into each other and it's harder to really tell. So I really appreciate you highlighting some of the strengths that Pepperdine has to offer. But beyond that, would you be able to throw some light on, what happens to applications after a student hits submit? It kind of just disappears into this universe. But if you could help, our viewers understand what happens, that would be awesome.
Yeah, certainly. So when an application is submitted, that kind of shows up on our radar, and we can kind of see, now that a student has submitted an application. And myself and my other colleague, we kind of monitor that and are making sure that students are kind of right along in the process, and that they have additional documents that are required as well. So there's regular email reminders that go out throughout the kind of the admission season, and we're on we have a fixed kind of schedule for admissions. Some universities have rolling admissions, so you just submit it whenever, but we have pretty fixed deadlines. So we have an early action deadline, which is November 1st. And so that means that, if you submit your application early, then you will get your decision early. It's not early decision. That's a little bit different. So I'm sure a lot of your students have heard both of those terms. And I know sometimes there's confusion about the difference between those terms, but we just do the early action. So, and then we have a regular decision deadline, which is January 15th. And so those decisions will go out by April 1st. So application is submitted, and then we want to make sure that students are getting the documents in. And so this is we're fortunate now to live in a nice technological age where a lot of this is just automated. And so the system it knows if students have submitted things, and if they haven't, it will regularly send out some email reminders. You're still missing a document. But we also have we're a small enough university that we're able to personalize that process. And so myself or my colleague regularly we'll look and we'll see the student is missing a certain thing, and we'll email them personally and say, hey, I noticed you were missing this. Because sometimes students think things are submitted, especially if it's like a recommendation letter that's coming from a counselor that they themselves are not submitting, and they're counting on someone else to do that, or like a transcript. And so, we are able to kind of be more personal in that, and just check in with students, check in with their counselors, if we have questions on anything. And so, so we kind of work through students through that process. Once everything is kind of checked off, then the application is considered complete, able to be read. And so, then I'll read the application and review all the documents, and make a decision, yes or no. So there can be more decisions than just admit or deny, but there's also a wait list. We also do, if a student is applying for fall, sometimes we will grant them admission for the spring. So if we feel like that this student's a good fit, but maybe not coming in the fall, maybe our numbers are going to be a little tight, but we would like to have them here on campus, we'll offer a spring admission rather than just a deny. So those are the kind of different decisions that we render on that. And then we hold the decisions until a particular date and release them all at the same time. So that's it can be different from institution to institution as well. Sometimes the decisions at other institutions, they release them right when it's made, but we hold them all and we release them on the same day.
Right. That's amazing. I think one of the things that I know that I've noticed to, students who have, and again, this is coming as being, part of like a high school team and things like that as well, is that I've always found that, and it could just be me or the students I've worked with, but I've always found that Pepperdine's always very liberal with scholarships as well. Right. And, especially for students who need that little extra support. I mean, I always, again, encourage them to consider Pepperdine, because I've always had, and I think a lot of it goes back to the funding that the school has and everything as well. But that's another thing that I really appreciate about the school. Right.
Yeah, we try to.
Yeah, no. Absolutely. And so, just coming back to the majors a bit, is that something that is considered when you're making admissions decisions? And, if that's the case, then how does that really play into how does that come into play?
Yeah, it really is not much of a factor at all. We don't have any majors that are impacted, meaning that there's not really a certain limit that we, once we meet that kind of limit, then we don't admit anymore. So we admit students to the university, to our undergraduate college, which is called Seaver College, is the undergraduate. And then, they choose what major they want. It's kind of up to them. In fact, most students, this is not just at Pepperdine, this is just in the US in general, will change their major at least 2 or 3 times. So if I, focused a lot on a student's major, they're probably going to come here and change it anyway. So there's not much of a point in me doing that. So yeah, we're looking just for students, again, that we feel like are a good fit for the university, and that, fit in kind of with the liberal arts model. So, because it's great if for a student to come here and think they really want one thing, but then they discover something else and realize, and they fall in love with it and change over to that. And so that's great. That's what we want. That's growth and that's discovery. And so yeah, so I don't put a whole lot of stock in that. I mean, I can see it on the application what their intended major is. And sometimes it's interesting, and a lot of times, especially if they're going to fine arts and want to submit a portfolio or something like that. But it's not much of a consideration in whether to admit or deny a student.
That sounds good. And you touched upon like portfolios, right? So I know for like students who want to study fine arts and things, they have to submit a portfolio. But how about for students who want to get into, a little bit more of the STEM based, right? If they submit links for, YouTube channels that they have or maker portfolios, is that something that is typically opened, because I know students sometimes they want to share so much, and I have to keep telling them that you have to understand, admission officers are trying to go through this so quickly. I was part of, 2 different admission teams as well prior to this, so I completely understand the stress. I cannot even begin to imagine how you go through everything. But I always caution them because, I keep, so that's my advice to them, that you have to share something only that is absolutely necessary. They've asked you all their questions. But so my question to you really, Scott, is, does the admissions team typically even go back and open some of these links, whether it's blogs or YouTube channels or maker portfolios and things like that?
Yeah, no, typically not. Yeah, just being honest, just for the sake of time, there's a lot of applications to kind of get through. So yeah. And then just to clarify, as far as the portfolio submissions for fine arts, so we do require for music students and theater students, but it is not required for art. So like if a student wants to do studio art, it's not required for admission, but if they want to be considered for a scholarship from the fine arts division, then they would need to submit an art portfolio.
Right. Okay.
And that's not evaluated by me, thankfully, because I'm not an artist and you don't want me evaluating your work. So that's all of the fine arts division. They evaluate all of that stuff.
Right. Yeah. No, that's amazing. Thank you for that clarification.
Mm-hmm.
And, if we can kind of again switch gears a bit and talk a little bit about the student life at Pepperdine, right? And I know, being a Christian college, I would imagine that these values seep into everything that students are doing. And I'm curious to know, how do you think this actually reflects in the everyday life of students?
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple ways. There's a big service focus. So every student at Pepperdine is engaged in some kind of service to the community. And so it's actually weaved in, as you mentioned, into the academics. So every major has an element of what we call service learning. So it's students getting outside of the classroom, putting into practice the things that they are learning in the classroom, and putting it into practice in a way that serves the community. And so it's tailored, it's specific to each major. So our business majors in their final year, they are in financial consulting. They form financial consulting groups with other business students. And they do financial consulting for nonprofit organizations here in Los Angeles. So they do the work. These organizations are usually involved in whether working with the homeless or environmental issues, those kind of things. And so our students come in and kind of help them with the finances of that, because a lot of times those services, if you're paying a professional, it's tens of thousands of dollars. And these are organizations that, again, nonprofit, and they don't have a lot of that cash on hand. So our students kind of provide that service to them. And then the students are getting a great experience, putting that into practice, what they're learning. And then additionally, there are a couple other things there. There's some religion courses that are a part of our general education program. And these are they're religion, but they're very academic in nature. And so, there's couple courses, an Old Testament and a New Testament course of the kind of Christian Bible. But it takes, kind of a historical approach and looks at the context about how these were written and how they came about. And then there's another course. There's a philosophy of religion course that doesn't just look at Christianity, but kind of the philosophy of religion in general. So there's that as well on the academic side. And then for the first 2 years, there is it's called a chapel program. It's kind of changed the names over the last few years since I've been here. This is like probably the third different name it's had. And chapel is like the new one that they've settled on for this year, just because it's more recognizable to people kind of understand that. But it's not a church service that students have to go to. It's actually kind of broken down into 3 different elements. So there's throughout the semester, a student will attend 13 of these kind of chapel groups. And so 4 of those are like large group gatherings where they bring in a guest speaker to kind of talk on a particular topic. And then 5 of those are what they call connection groups. And so these are groups that students choose to be in. They're kind of smaller groups, and a lot of them are like activity based. And so the reason it's called connection, it's connecting with that smaller group of students that you're with. And so one of them is a hiking group. And so for those 5 connection groups, they'll just go and they'll do hikes. There's a lot of great trails around here here in Malibu, and so students will do that. And then there's another element of it that's called our RISE program, which is our resilience education program, which I think is kind of popular at a lot of universities these days. But just kind of teaching life skills, to students and resiliency skills. So that's kind of an overview of the spiritual life at Pepperdine.
No, that's great. It sounds like a really good blend between
Mhm.
academics and spirituality, right? And
Certainly.
so I know there are a lot of students who are looking for that. And even though they may not be Christians coming in, but they like that balance, especially if they're leaving home and, you want some semblance of, a balance, right? And that's what it seems like they would get at Pepperdine. So that's great. I noticed we're almost at time, but can we do 2 or 3 more questions,
Of
or are
course.
you
Yeah,
rushing?
certainly.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. All right. Okay, great. So, I think you've already given us a really good idea about what a Pepperdine student would look like,
Mhm.
right? We just mentioned balance, but is there anything else, or how else would you describe, a student at Pepperdine?
Yeah, the word that I use a lot is active. Our students are just very active. They're engaged. They're active here on our campus. We have a very high involvement rate of students in student clubs and organizations that are doing lots of great things. And we're blessed to be in a very beautiful part of the country with fantastic weather most of the time. And so it lends itself to being outside. And so our students are active outside. They get physical exercise. Our campus has a lot of hills, so you're going to get exercise walking to class, certainly. But a lot of great kind of recreational opportunities just right outside the campus. Like I mentioned, hiking, going to the beach, surfing, all that kind of fun stuff. And then, being close to, the city of LA, just about 30 minutes away or so, a lot of stuff to do there. So our students they're out and they're active. And so I think it's, it lends itself again to a healthy and kind of balanced life for sure.
Right. That's amazing. Active. I like that. Right. And how about like for international students? So what kind of support is provided to them when they come onto campus?
Yeah, certainly. So our office is kind of like the first door, and we offer the student services of the immigration help and helping students get their student visas coming in. But we are also really connected with many other campus organizations and departments on campus. and we're always constantly in contact with them, making sure that kind of the other areas, our international students are well cared for. And so we have a student success center that is involved kind of academic success and helping students with that and getting that kind of help that they need. And they regularly do, every year they do like events for international students. And so they kind of have a focus on that. We have in our counseling center, they do, counseling is available to any student for free, and you can do one-on-one, but they also do international student group sessions as well. And so that's a great time for students to come together and talk with other international students, also together and share kind of their experience, share how, they're being homesick and kind of do that. And so it's a guided time led by, a professional counselor, but in a group with other international students. And then we have an intercultural affairs department. And within that, there's a staff member, and her job, she was a former international student herself, and her job is international student engagement. And so, even she does right off the bat during our orientation, she does an event for international students, and they regularly do events that are specific for international students throughout the year. And just, she's really good and attuned to having an eye out for them and making sure that, they're taken care of.
That's amazing. I remember one of my first sessions on campus, again, as an international, was sitting with somebody who was in the international office and really getting a sense for, what it's like to really study in the country, and, lots of cultural, information sessions, right? So I really remember that, because it can be so different when you're coming from different countries, your values, everything can be so different. And so it was really interesting. And I remember very distinctly how that was my first introduction, to college, right? And that was amazing. So yeah, incredible work. And maybe one last question, Scott. If you could give one piece of advice to rising seniors as they're just beginning to put in and put together their college applications, what would that be?
Yeah, I would say be open to several different possibilities. So even if you know your destination, even if meaning what you want your career to be, where you want to end up, there are still many different roads that can take you to that place, can take you to that same place. And so, so think about what kind of experience do you want to have on the journey to that place. So maybe, example, maybe you want to be an engineer. You can do that by going to a large public R1 research university. You can also do that by going to a small liberal arts university. We offer an engineering program as well. You can do it in a big city or a small town. You could start at a community college, save a lot of money, go to a community college, do your general education courses for 2 years, transfer to another university, do a major there, another fantastic university, here in California, the public community colleges have kind of direct pathways to the UCs and the Cal States. And so, if you meet that minimum GPA, then you're going to a UC or a Cal State. So, so there's a lot of different ways that you can get to maybe where you want to be. So think about, what you value and what you want, and kind of, start to formulate your plan around that.
I think that it's excellent, excellent advice. And what a super way to end our session today, because I know sometimes students feel like if they don't get into this one particular university, that's it, like things are over for them. So I think that is amazing advice. Thank you for everything that you've shared today, for all your insights and for your perspective. We really appreciate your time.
Certainly. You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Scott.